On May 25, 1979, Flight 191 from American Airlines was scheduled to go from the O'Hare Airport in Chicago, Illinois to Los Angeles at around 3 p.m. that afternoon. So, the pilots, the crew, and 258 passengers boarded the plane without any incidents. Then, Captain Walter Lux, the first officer James Diller, and flight engineer Alfred Udovig made all the preparation for takeoff. They went through the checklist and everything was fine before they were given the clear to take off from the air traffic control.
American 191, turn right 8330, clear for takeoff 32, right north lane.
Now, as they were lifting from the ground, the left engine all of a sudden flipped back over the wing and fell, and the airplane quickly turned sideways with the left wing pointing down, and then it just crashed with a huge explosion, killing all the passengers, the 13 crew members, and 2 workers that were in the hangar. It is still considered the worst single aviation accident in the United States history. Of course, after the accident, they started an investigation, and there were multiple people that actually witnessed the left engine falling off the plane. They also found eventually the black box, but it didn't have too much information. It only showed a normal taxi and then a normal process to take off, and suddenly they hear a thump, and somebody said, "Damn," and then it just went silent. Now the question is, what caused the crack on the pylon? And the thing is that 8 weeks before, Flight 191 was scheduled for a routine maintenance, which included taking care of the left engines. And to do so, they kind of had to take the engine out of the wing. But the maintenance crew didn't follow the manufacturer recommendation, which was to remove the engines from the pylon and then the pylon from the wing. They decided that took too much time because it meant disconnecting multiple connections, and they figured out just taking the engine attached to the pylon was fewer connections, and therefore it will save them about 200 hours of work, so that's what they did. Now, putting the engine with the pylon attached back to the wing proved to be very challenging. And as they were trying to do so, they feel like at one point they kind of misaligned and the pylon ended up hitting the bottom part of the wing. And that was what caused the crack. Now, that crack wasn't strong enough for the plane to have an immediate failure. However, with every force of each takeoff and every landing for the next 8 weeks, it caused the crack to get bigger and bigger until eventually on May 25th, it completely broke. The next question was even if they lost an engine, they still had 2 more. So technically they were able to fly and turn around and land. Even people say that they were even able to fly all the way to LA without any problem. So why did they crash? They eventually found out that as the left engine fell off, it kind of damaged the hydraulic system, which made the hydraulic fluid start leaking. And that there is actually a picture of the plane when it's completely sideways, and you could see the hydraulic fluid leaking out of the plane. Now, as the hydraulic fluid from the left wing was leaking out, that caused the slats of the left wing to retract, which meant that the wing lost its lift, meaning it couldn't stay up. Meanwhile, the right side wing, it had the lift working perfectly fine, so it kept rising up, and that's what made the plane completely be sideways. However, the pilots were trained to deal with this kind of situation too, so why didn't they do it? Well, they found out that the left engine was the one that had the power for the warning system, which in this case was the stick shaker that will allow the pilots to know they were stalling, meaning the wing lost lift. and therefore that they should increase the speed to kind of correct the problem. However, since they didn't know they were stalling, they just followed the procedure for engine failure, which was to reduce speed, making the stalling even worse. Now, they also find out that the left engine was the one powering the black boxes and the communication with the air controller tower. So, as soon as the left engine fell, the black boxes stopped recording and they weren't able to communicate with the control tower, so pretty much they were doomed. Now, this plane was full of fuel, so when the plane crashed, it set up flames and black smoke that could be seen up to 50 miles away, and it made the floor tremble with the force of the crash. Now, when it crashed, it destroyed completely the hangar that it landed on, killing 2 employees and sending debris to the mobile homes that were around, destroying several of the mobile homes and several cars around, and injuring 5 people on the ground. Now, you can imagine everything was burning, and the fire rescue workers, they were there very quickly trying to control the fire, and eventually they were able to. And now it was the process of recovering the bodies and see what happened. And as the bodies were recovered, they were placed in a temporary morgue set up in one of the aircraft hangars. Another decision that they made was to kind of ground all the DC-10 planes on June 6, 1979, which was the model of the airplane of Flight 191. And this decision was made because they didn't know what caused the crash, and they say until we don't figure out what happened, it is better to ground all the planes. And it ended up being a very good decision because they found out that several other planes had the same crack on the pylon, which could have generated more disasters. As a result of this accident, there were many changes. There were improvements on the airplane design and the way they are doing maintenance, and better training for the maintenance workers and crew, which help improve the air safety for all passengers. And here is where the spooky begins. On May of 1979, David Booth, he was just standing over a field when he looked and he saw an American airline airplane, a big American airline airplane, but he felt like there was something wrong. It wasn't making the right noises, and he had this horrible feeling that something was about to happen. Suddenly, the plane turned sideways with the wing up, and then it just crashed into the floor with a big explosion. Then, he just woke up. The next night, he had the same dream. And it kept happening over and over to the point that he felt he needed to do something about it. So he called the Federal Aviation Administration to let them know about his dream. And unfortunately, there wasn't much they could do about with this information. Like, they heard him, but it's not like they could do something. And eventually, he kept having this dream for 10 days until the plane crashed, and then it just stopped. Now, within hours of the crash, residents from the mobile homes that were around the crash accident, they started hearing like knocking or pounding on the door, sometimes very forcefully, and when they went to see who it was, there was no one in there. Now, this continued for weeks and even months, and it started to escalate to the point where doorknobs were being like churned and rattled, but yet again, there was no one there. Now, there's also claim of full-body apparitions. So some of the residents experienced the knocking on the door, but when they opened the door, there was a man like frantically looking for his luggage and asking for help for his connection flight, and then it just vanished. There were also bobbing white lights that were seen in the crash site, and the police actually went to investigate, thinking that maybe people were there with flashlights trying to get pieces from the wreckage, but there was no one there. Now, people from around the area started hearing strange noises too. They heard screaming and cries and moaning, and even the noise of a plane crashing. And for a few months after the crash, the dogs from the neighborhood, they would just like stare to where the plane crashed and just bark like crazy for no apparent reason. Now, there's another story about a man that was walking his dog in the middle of the night when suddenly another man comes to him, like asking for help to the nearest phone so he could make an emergency call. And this man kind of smelled like gasoline and he looked like he was smoldering, almost as if he was producing too much heat from his body. The man just turned around and he pointed to the nearest payphone, and when he turned back to let him know, the other person just disappeared. Now, more recently, there's another person that said that the security system of his mobile home just kept registering as the front door opened and closed within like seconds. It just kept opening and closing, and that the sensors will keep going off and setting off the alarm for no reason. Now, meanwhile, inside the airport, people have seen a man making a phone call close to the gate where Flight 191 departed, just to vanish in thin air. Today, there is a memorial wall with the name of all the victims located in Lake Park to commemorate all the people who died on that crash. Do you have any ghost story, paranormal encounters, or urban legends that you would like to share with us? Please send it to us at Ivonneplusone@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for being my plus one. I really hope you like this episode, and we'll see you next time.